going to talk about, or like to talk about the technology enhanced learning for community education as part of the project there. So, I mean, how did the project come about to begin with, and maybe tell us a little bit about it?
This project we did in collaboration with Ankesan, and their community education model is already proven. They facilitate over 600 learners annually in accessing part-time education programs, and they've had like excellent outcomes in combating educational disadvantage or learning disadvantage over the past 26 years. So one of their strategic goals is to scale impact. And a way that they can accomplish that is to start using learning technology that will, reinforce and keep their core values. That's very important. So the first step in doing that is to move towards a blended model. And going back to Tom's definition, when I say blended, I mean a blend of a virtual learning environment and the face-to-face model that they currently have. So the challenge to moving towards that model is to ensure your pedagogical quality, the current pedagogical quality that they have, and to maintain the strengths of that current methodology.
There were obviously strengths in the face-to-face model, the traditional model, so part of what you needed to do was to ensure that the quality, because one of the things that people talk about, the quality of online learning, the quality of blended learning may not be as good as the quality of face-to-face. So I suppose what measures, how did you go about trying to ensure that the quality remained the same?
Well, I mean, the reason to move towards that model is scalability. To make the programs available to as many learners as possible. Mm-hmm. And especially learners who didn't have that much exposure to learning in general, or maybe didn't feel confident enough to go about it. They need all the support that they can get. So that's the reason to move towards that model. But I have to admit that when we started it, I felt that it would be a challenge for those learners as well, because of their lack of computer literacy skills in general. And also because, oftentimes they're not that confident to start using it.
Sure.
So that was two things that we thought challenging. But then when we, and especially because, so what Ankesan did was they designed a pilot course. So they rolled it out, and we together evaluated it, and based on the evaluation, we recommended strategies for them. We observed their live sessions and evaluated. They also recorded them, so we could also analyze them afterwards. And the third thing that we did was we designed a questionnaire, and we ran a focus group, so we actually asked them for their opinions.
There were some challenges in building an online community. Can you talk a little around that? Because obviously, again, when people are used to being together, one thing I find myself is that students quite often, more and more in a third level college, students perhaps have met each other online before they meet face to face. In this case, you go in the other direction, they know each other face to face, and you are going online perhaps. And were there particular challenges in that?
Because they were from different locations in Ireland.
Okay.
But yes, that was a challenge indeed. Although they did meet face to face at the beginning of the course, so that was really good, because that way they could start building relationships. But yeah, they indicated for sure that not seeing their peers was one of the main things that they mentioned. Like not being able to see them really got in the way of building those relationships and starting to build that community. So one of the things that you can do for that is to start using webcams, for example. So especially in the live sessions where at least when somebody speaks, you can see who's speaking, and that way you get to know people better. Oh, that face, yeah, they thought this, or they have this opinion, and so that. But also for the asynchronous part of the technology platform, so where they would go in between the live sessions to set up user profiles, to upload a picture, really important to just have a face, but also to fill the profile out. So to say, these are my interests, these are my goals or my learning desires, so that you can find people with the same interests. And another important thing for the community aspect is collaborative assignments. Mm-hmm. And not just for the sake of collaboration, but to really have that final deliverable so that people start to realize, hey, I'm actually dependent on these other people, and these other people are dependent on me. And that way they start, to build trust and to really get to know people and to start they start to build relationships, and that's where you get that community feel. And the third thing that's really important is to have a moderator available. A moderator is extremely important in a virtual learning environment.
Can you explain what you mean by a moderator? Yeah.
So a moderator would be somebody who would kind of especially for the asynchronous part, would kind of follow what's going on, the discussions. Do people get responses to their questions? Because it's very disencouraging if you finally have the confidence to post something and then nobody responds. I mean, that's, then you kind of give up fairly quickly. So you have to have somebody, not just somebody who would give answers to your questions or give you a response, but somebody who can maybe flag, hey, Leo, haven't asked a question about so-and-so, and I think you are the one that would be able to answer that. So kind of motivate people and encourage people to respond.
If you were starting all over again, is there a different place you would start? Is there how would you approach a project? Has it changed anything about the way you think about this type of community?
Well, I mean, we evaluate, and apart from the community aspect, there were two other challenges that we identified, and that was to offer a really integrated learning solution, and a third one was the technology itself. Mm-hmm. So with regards to the integrated learning solution, interactions online are just very different, and when you have to design a course, especially when you have an existing one for face-to-face model, it's not simple to change that to an online version. It really requires a mind shift. And also facilitating online, when you're a great tutor in a face-to-face model, doesn't necessarily mean you're good at facilitating online. So that's a challenge as well. And the technology is challenging, not just how to use it, but also when and how do I use tools and features that are available. So for example, I have a whiteboard in the live environment, but how do I use that, or polling? Mm-hmm. So it's more about analyzing the challenges and then do your research on what's available. In general, things you could do is what Tom said earlier, take that blended approach, not just use articles to read, but also you can use videos, you can use podcasts, so be creative, use a wide variety of learning materials and content. Also in the live sessions, for example, don't be, as a facilitator, over-reliant on text chat, but use a whiteboard, put up a statement, and people can just click emoticons to say, yes, I agree, or I don't agree. Things like that. There's many simple things highlighting, use images, stuff like that. But again, it's I think the most critical thing is to start with an individual's needs.